Okay, so now I guess we can start. Just a moment, let me demonstrate the screen. Can you see my screen? Let me know, please. Any reaction?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So today we continue talking about syntax with you, though the next lecture is going to be dedicated to semantics.
А вы можете вот девочки общупины потом
Выключите, пожалуйста, звук, хорошо, ребят, все, кто слушают, потому что очень получается неприятно, когда перебивают. А так я вас попрошу выключить звук. Сейчас попробую это сделать самостоятельно. Выключить звук у всех. Okay. So now let's continue. We continue talking about syntax, and today we will discuss the such notions as phrase structure rules, something that we discussed with you during our seminars, tree diagrams, constituency tests, and we would cover a little bit of Chomsky approach on syntax, how he viewed it. Besides, we would partially talk with you about the connection between let's start. The study of syntax has flowered since 1950s. One small but essential part of Chomsky's contribution has been to bring certain insights and perspectives from the study of formal languages in mathematics and computer science to bear on the fundamental problems of syntax. Basically, Noam Chomsky, well, initially he was a mathematician, and he compared the study of syntax, the study of language, with the study of mathematics. And therefore, he considered that syntax generate certain structures, syntax generate certain grammatical rules, the same way as maths does with different formulas. So this argues that when one is trying to discover the syntactic rules and patterns of a particular language, those rules should be stated explicitly and precisely, with ideally nothing being taken for granted or left to the imagination. The broadly Chomskyan approach to syntax is often called formal or generative. We discussed with you the notion of generative grammar on our seminars. So generative grammar means that we generate well-formed, grammatically correct structures, and they should be grammatically correct to the language that we're analyzing. So this is the all and only criteria. And formal, because it uses mathematical style of formalisms and definitions in presenting its analysis, such as the recursive rules. As for generative, okay, may I ask you please, those who are typing in the chat, Simonova, please write me on my email, those who are absent, not here in the chat, please. Sorry. So generative because it seeks to explicate how fluent speakers can generate new well-formed expressions of the language. Many current syntacticians still accept these labels for their work, while others have reacted against them and what they see as some deficiencies and excesses of this approach. However, it seems fair to say that even those that react most loudly against the Chomsky approach have been positively influenced by its most basic ethos and by some of what has been learned from that perspective. Chomsky compared generative grammar and his idea of generating rules with the creativity of human mind and with mathematical formula. If we're able to generate grammatically correct structures, we are also able to think of any lexical unions that can fill in those slots that have been generated by us. And besides, there are three basic lessons of syntactic research, according to Noam Chomsky. So, beyond the details of a vast number of particular discoveries, one can identify at least three let's say, broader themes within syntax. So first of all, that syntax is a vast topic, and there are some areas which haven't been discovered yet. Second of all, constraints are central to syntax, and that there is a large component of syntax that is common to all human languages. Okay, let's continue. Phrase structure rules. To remind you, there are two approaches to syntactic analysis of any sentence, of any structure, of any phrase. First being phrase structure rule, second being tree diagram. As for phrase structure rule, we do remember that this is the formula which allows us to say that whatever is to the left of the arrow, as it is shown here, should be equal to what stands after it. So basically, if we see a sentence, we need to consider what components it consists of. For this, we need to identify what constituents included in the structure of the sentence, or what constituents are included in the structure of a phrase if it's not a sentence. So structure rules were central to the theory of syntax developed in Chomsky in 1957, which kickstarted the modern field of generative syntax. And rules like sentence rewrites as a noun phrase, verb phrase, and verb phrase rewrites as verb or verb plus noun phrase expresses in a succinct way several facts, according to Chomsky. So first, they express the fact that all normal sentences must have at least a subject. So a subject can be, well, it is usually expressed with the noun phrase, and we remember that noun phrase can consist of, well, of a noun or a determiner plus a noun or a determiner plus optional adjective and a noun, a pronoun, or a proper noun. So it's up to the context, the one that we're analyzing. And a verb, but here are exceptions, imperatives, and certain elliptical expressions, which also should be considered when analyzing a sentence. If the subject is omitted, the sentence strikes native speakers of English as deviant, because here we deal with the straightforward order subject, verb, object, and so subject should be present under any occasions. There are some exceptions again, but usually it is present. And again, when we identify a noun phrase, as it is here, usually we don't say it's not just a noun that should be present within the noun phrase. It can consist of any different elements. We don't look at the class of the part of speech, but we look at the behavior that those parts of speech perform in a given sentence. For example, we have two sentences. Mary likes the dress, point B. As you see, sentence B is marked with the star here. The star actually is an indicator of a sentence being ill-formed or ungrammatical. Second, these rules express the fact that the subject appears before the verb and the object appears immediately after it. This is usually how the English sentence is structured. There are some exceptions, but usually it is structured the way it is given here. Subject, verb, and object. And if the subject is absent, then we might think that the sentence is deviant because it's written not according to the generated structure, not according to the stated rules. The dress likes Mary also is a sentence with a completely different meaning from Mary likes dress. This is because it cannot be understood as having the object come before the verb and the subject after, but only as the dress being the subject and Mary being the object. The other logically possible rearrangements of the words are simply ungrammatical. So let's consider the examples given here. Mary the dress likes, likes Mary the dress Mary, the dress Mary likes. That is okay in the context of topicalization, the sentence D, especially if we take into consideration some some literary approaches where when authors can play with words, even though there are strict order a rule, they can deviate from it, but it is done on purpose, not because they don't know the rules of grammar. So these sentences which are presented here, they are deviant because they break the normal order as we got used to. Third, the phrase structure rules also express the most subtle fact that the object and the verb together form a entire unit in English, with the subject attached more easily. Thus, in some special context, one can put the verb and the object together at the front of the sentence, leaving the subject behind, as in sentence A. In contrast, one can never put the subject and the verb. So let's have a look at the sentences given here. I told you that John would like the dress, and indeed. A. Like the dress, John does. So, John does that dress. Sentence given here is, well, it's ungrammatical, it sounds odd, and it doesn't correspond to the rules, to the syntactic rules of English language. So, this unit that contains both the verb and the subject, the phrase that appears before the comma is called the verb phrase. Putting these pieces together, we can diagram the structure of a simple English sentence as follows. So you can see here the tree diagram. Tree diagram is another approach of structural sentence analysis. And on top, we write S as it is a sentence, then we have a division into two branches. Two branches have been identified as the key elements or constituents of a sentence. It is a noun phrase, which is given here as a proper noun, Mary, and a verb phrase, which is subdivided into two sub-branches, verb likes and noun phrase, the dress. So overall, we have Mary likes the dress. And here we have the verb phrase. And it may include a component of a noun phrase if these two function as a constituent, as one unit, as one brick or building block in the sentence. Also, it is worth mentioning that there are different phrases, and here you can see the examples of these different phrases. For instance, a red box, which is a noun phrase, will go, which is a verb phrase, quite big, adjective phrase, very slowly, adverb phrase, in the cup preposition phrase. How do we decide whether it is a noun phrase, verb phrase, adjective, adverb, preposition phrase? Again, simply first we write a sentence, and then we'll look at what major components the sentence consists of. Usually I ask you to kind of circle those most important components, and then we'll look at H, and in H we try to identify the main element. So if here the main element is a box, a red box, not a red or article a, then it can be labeled as a noun phrase. Here will go. Be it a wheel in this case or go anyway. This is an auxiliary and this is a verb, and together they form verb phrase. And they function together. You cannot separate them and leave them separately. The third one is adjective phrase, quite big. Here we need to identify what is the most important component, quite or big. Since quite modifies big, we say that big is the main element here, and therefore it is identified as adjective phrase. It is big as an adjective. The same as here, very slowly. even though it is kind of taken out of context, we may imagine how this phrase would function in a sentence. So very slowly, I opened the door very slowly. Very slowly would modify and would give certain characteristics to the verb rather than noun. And that is why we can identify it as being adverb phrase. Next, prepositional phrase in the car. In the car here is considered to be a prepositional phrase, again, because the most important element here is in, and what goes after usually is definite article the and a noun, and together this usually functions as a prepositional phrase. Also, it is important to mention that it is okay when we have just one word and it is labeled as a phrase. So, for example, here in the tree diagram, we have a noun phrase. It is a broader notion. It is a broader category, syntactic category. Even though it's called phrase, and we might think that if it is a phrase, then there should be more than one component within this phrase. It's totally fine if there is just one unit, well, one word of any kind. So it can be a noun, it can be a verb, whatever. So it's up to the context. Or it can actually include two components altogether. All right, so let's to find phrase structure rules in English. So here is the summary of how we should apply a syntactic analysis, how we should identify different phrases within a sentence. So first of all, it is recommended to label all words with their part of speech. But before, as I mentioned, it is important to look at a sentence, circle the components that it consists of, and only afterwards start labeling the words with their part of speech. Afterwards, we will find all phrases in each sentence. We know that there are noun phrase, verb phrase, adjective phrase, adverb phrase, and prepositional phrase altogether. And so therefore we try firstly labeling all of them and then identifying the phrases that a sentence includes. Moving on, individual phrase structure rules to describe the structure of each phrase. So for instance, each noun phrase, each verb phrase, preposition phrase, and sentence. So even if we have, for instance, a sentence and it consists of noun phrase and verb phrase, we need to illustrate further below what a noun phrase consists of, whether there is one element, for instance, proper noun or pronoun, or it includes two elements, for example, a determiner plus a noun. As for verb phrase, so the same. We need to write what verb phrase consists of, because usually it consists of minor elements altogether. And so therefore we write verb phrase, again, it consists of adverb and verb, or just verb. So the same works with prepositional phrase and of course sentence. So this means describing the contents of a phrase in terms of constituent phrases instead of individual constituent words whenever possible. So first we start with phrases and then with individual words. After you've done this for each sentence in the data, look at all the rules for a single kind of phrase and see if you can combine them at all. And so we do this for each type of a phrase, for a noun phrase, for a verb phrase, prepositional phrase, and sentence. Transformational and interpretive rules. There are also certain systematic relationships between sentences that need to be captured, for which Chomsky originally proposed the formal device of the transformational rule. These rules change one phrase structure into another. On our seminars, with some we've managed to cover it. If we haven't, then we will do it. The rest in transformational, or in other words, movement rules that are used to transform one sentence into another without changing the content and without radically changing the structure of the phrases, so to say. So let's have a look at the examples given here. Mary will like the dress. Mary will like what? What will Mary like? What will Mary like the dress? The dress will Mary like. Like other languages, English has a special set of words that can take the place of a missing piece of information in order to form a question. And these are usually called WH words after the letters that most of them begin with. For example, what, where, who, which, why, etc. How is also counted here, even though it is not. It doesn't start with WH. However, it is not enough in English to simply put one of these words in place of the desired piece of information. Rather, the WH word must appear at the beginning of a sentence. So usually when we ask, it's called a special question, in English language, we put WH word at the beginning of a sentence. Two words, it follows like auxiliary. Moreover, in point C, sentence C, what will Mary like, is a striking exception to the generalization made above that the verb like must be immediately followed by an object. On the contrary, in this environment, like mustn't have an object after it, as it is shown by sentence D. What will Mary like the dress? One natural way to describe this network of facts is to say that the initial structure of C, what will Mary like, is like that of an A, Mary will like the dress, with what being substituted for the dress. However, the structure is transformed by a rule that can be stated something like this. Move WH words to before the first word of a sentence that contains them. This rule applies to interrogative noun phrases, but not to other kinds of phrases. Hence, a sentence here is not possible, even though it is perfectly parallel to, well, to C. What will Mary like? The dress will Mary like. In declarative sentences, the auxiliary always comes after the subject and before the main verb, whereas in interrogative sentences, it comes between the WH phrase and the subject. Transformational relationships like this turn out to be, well, relatively common. Point 13, well, sentences as here, A, B, C, and D, illustrate another one. Notice that the placement of the future auxiliary element will is different in declarative sentences like A, Mary will like the dress, and interrogative one, like Mary will like what. So in declarative sentences, it always comes after the subject and before the main verb, whereas in interrogative statements, it comes between the WH phrase and the subject. This change in word order is required, and one cannot have a second auxiliary of the same type in the usual position between the subject and the verb, as it is given in point 15. What Mary will like, what will Mary will. Again, transformation is a simple way to account for the fact that the shift, the auxiliary verb, to the front of the subject, a noun phrase in a sentence that are interpreted as questions. So this was for transformational rules. Simply the rule of how we build simple interrogative sentences in English languages. And now let's move on to constituency tests. So when we talked about figure out what part of speech a single word was, we said that while intuitive definitions like a noun is a person, place, or thing might be useful guides, to be really precise, we need to use structural definitions or categories like nouns to figure out whether a given word was a noun. So therefore, formal definitions like a noun is just a person or a place, a thing, doesn't always work when it comes to structural syntax analysis. Similarly, while an intuitive definition of a noun phrase like a noun phrase is a group of words that describe a noun and can go in sentences where nouns can go, may be a useful guide. So we will use the formal tests that are called constituency tests to prove whether the groups of words are particular kind of phrases. It's important to say that there exist, well, thousands of different constituency tests. The mechanics is almost the same, so it slightly varies from test to test, but usually they are quite similar to each other, and they have different names. And today we will consider just a couple of them and try to apply them to our syntactical structural analysis of sentences. So constituency, what it means practically, what is constituency? When I claim that a string of words is a constituent, I'm claiming that all of those words are grouped together under one label. Again, back to syntactic categories and phrases. These labels are usually, usually all these phrases that we've mentioned: noun phrase, verb phrase, preposition phrase, adjective phrase, and adverb phrase. It is important to notice that even a single word can be just a noun or can be just a verb, is by its very definition a constituent. Even the minor indefinite article is a constituent, which means it is a significant part of a sentence. A sentence itself is also by definition a constituent, even though it also contains other constituents within itself. But if we look at a sentence in a context, we would say that a sentence functions as a constituent, which is important for interpretation of the entire text, for the coherence of the text. So what I'm trying to do when I figure out constituency is I'm trying to figure out how information is packaged. So how information is decoded, in what formula and what mathematic formula it is kind of packed in the text if we apply Chomsky's approach. How does any language put its pieces together to make a meaningful utterance? Precisely, in any given language, I want to know which words go with which words. Because we might group different words together, and substituting them with another word would result in the same meaning. But if we substitute the phrase with, with a different kind of word, it would result in ill grammatical structure of a sentence and meaningless sentence, just in general. So this allows me to write the simplest possible rules. We call a string of words that forms a group a constituent. It's not always about group, it's just an element or a unit of a sentence that is considered to be a brick or a building block of the entire sentence. A constituent, by definition, has a syntactic category. And we do remember that a syntactic category is just any part of speech. But these syntactic categories could be grouped together as major components, as wider groups, which are called phrases, but not necessarily, because again, there might be just one word, one syntactic category that would function as a phrase. This is because a constituent has a syntactic distribution. For example, a happy mailman has a distribution of a noun. That is, the entire string of words acts like a noun, not an adjective, not a verb, not a preposition, not an adverb. Therefore, there is a sense, kind of an intuition, that at this point, happy mailman is a noun. And if we move back to our previous discussion about how we identify phrases, we don't look at what components the phrase consists of. Well, we do look at it, but it's not the main important thing that we first pay attention to. The most important thing is how it behaves, or as it is written, how the phrase acts like in a sentence. Even though happy is an adjective, so the syntactic category of a happy is different from a syntactic category of a mailman, but together these words could be grouped, and together these words form a constituent or a unit of a language, and it acts like a noun. And here it's called an intuition, right? But Chomsky called it generative grammar. In universal grammar, kind of, we do understand by the very nature of a sentence that we look at that the phrase behaves like a noun. Therefore, it can be in a sentence, it can function as a noun phrase, whether as a subject or as an object. And so again, as I've mentioned, there are different types of tests, constituency tests, and a formal definition of constituency test would be a way of testing whether a group of words forms a phrase or not. Even if you rely on your intuition, on this linguistic sense, then there are some approaches or tests that allows you to check, to prove that these two words, even though having different syntactic categories, can actually function together and can form a unit of a language. The constituency test for a noun phrase is a pronoun test, where we can replace a group of words that we think might be a noun phrase with a pronoun. And if the resulting sentence is grammatical and means the same thing as the original sentence, that is, the resulting sentence is a shorter way of saying the original one, the group of words is a noun phrase. So let's have a look at the examples given here. Replace a group of words with a pronoun like he, she, him, her, it, they, or them. If any of these replacements results in grammatical sentence with the same meanings as the original sentence, so the group of words is called a noun phrase. Even if there are like 4 or maybe 5 words, if these 5 words can be substituted with just one word being a pronoun, and the sentence won't be lost, and the meaning would still be present in the sentence, and the rules of grammar would be followed, then we say that these 5 words act together as a constituent or as a unit, as an element of a sentence. If none of the replacements has these results, so the words are not a noun phrase, obviously. And let's consider the examples given here. So we have Bingley and Darcy meet in the parlor. Overall, there are 3 words, and if we start analyzing the sentence, we will start with circling or with outlining the most important component within the sentence. So here it would be Bingley and Darcy functioning as a subject, then it would be meet in the parlor is kind of an object. And so then we would start identifying the syntactic category, a category of a proper noun, verb, preposition, determiner, and noun. Bingley and Darcy. We'll look at the behavior of this phrase, and it functions as a noun phrase, right? And therefore we would try substituting these 3 words, Bingley and Darcy, with a pronoun, with a plural pronoun, they. Let's compare these 2 sentences. Bingley and Darcy meet in the parlor. We can substitute Bingley and Darcy with pronoun they. And it would result in they meet in the parlor. So the meaning slightly changes. I mean, there is a reference back to them, but still the sentence is meaningful and the grammar is still here. So it is grammatically correct sentence. Therefore, we can say that Bingley and Darcy, these 2 words form a unit, and these 2 words function as a phrase, as a constituent, to be more precise. Another example is here. I watched the movie about snakes on a plane last week. The movie about snakes on a plane. So let's count how many words are involved. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So 7 words. Let's identify syntactic categories. So here we would apply these steps to find the phrase structure rules in English. Yeah, we'll label it. First, we'll label part of speech. We find the phrases, write individual phrase structure rules, and etc. So having this sentence, I watched the movie about snakes on a plane last week. Hey, I for sure would be subject, watched would be verb, SV, right? The movie about snakes on a plane, that would be object, and last week, well, when it happened. The movie about snakes on a plane, these words kind of extend the meaning of the movie. They give the characteristics to the movie. They modify the movie, right? So therefore, we would try to substitute all of these 7 words with just 1 word, 1 pronoun, it. And we can possibly say, I watched it last week, where it simply refers to the word movie. We just exclude the other modifying words to which relates to movie, basically. And so here we have I watched it last week. We have a grammatically correct sentence, and we also have a meaningful sentence, which means these 7 words act as a unit, act as just one constituent of a sentence, because the replacement has resulted in a grammatically correct sentence, syntactically and semantically correct sentence. Here, so I've even highlighted it here. It is important to understand that phrases can be just single words, as I've mentioned several times. So a phrase can consist of just 1 word. So a noun phrase can consist of just a proper noun, as Mary, for example. We can prove this using the pronoun test on a sentence like Bob likes cheese. So the sentence Bob likes it is a grammatical and has the same meaning as the original sentence. Since cheese can be replaced with the pronoun it, cheese is a one-word noun phrase. Again, even though it is a simple short sentence, we would apply all of these steps that we've discussed previously. So we have sentence Bob likes cheese. Here, we identify the components that a sentence consists of. Constituents is Bob being subject, likes being a verb, and cheese being an object. Noun, verb, noun, right? But we cannot state in phrase structure rule or in tree diagram, we cannot write just these syntactic categories. We need to apply phrases. So therefore, in our tree diagram, we would label the top of the diagram with S, and then it will be divided into noun phrase, verb phrase, and noun phrase, right? Even though for each phrases, there is just one word selected individually, like Bob for a noun phrase, likes for a verb phrase, and cheese for a noun phrase. And it's totally fine. Another test is called clefting or cleft sentence or cleft test. A cleft construction is one where you take two parts of a sentence and divide them from each other. Initially, cleft is split or added. So, in English, a cleft with a sentence with the form such as it is, / was, something like that. So, to use cleft test, we take the string of words we're investigating and put it up to the words it was or it's, depending on the context, whether it refers to present or to past. Then we put the remaining parts of the sentence after the word that. So let's try this for phrases that we've already all to these ones. So actually, this one looks like a mathematical formula. If well, A plus B equals point C. So let's have a look at this example. The students saw a movie after class. We apply clefting or cleft sentence test. It was a movie that the students saw after class, right? So here we're checking whether a movie is a constituent or not. It was a movie that the students saw, as it is here. It is or it was that. It was a movie that students saw. It was after class that the students saw a movie. Here, what we check is after class. It was after class that the students saw a movie. Again, we're applying the formula, which again reminds us these mathematical calculations. Another example, the students saw a movie about dinosaurs. So we apply again clefting. It was a movie about dinosaurs that the students saw. So here, a movie about dinosaurs, right, is going to be a constituent. Besides, it can function as we can also apply here a pronoun test, since it is a noun phrase, and for noun phrases, to check whether the noun phrase consists of this and that element, we may apply both a pronoun test and a cleft sentence test. Here, Nimra bought a scarf at that strange little shop. Again, we apply clefting or cleft sentence test, and it would result in the following. It was at that strange little shop that Nimra bought a scarf. Here, at that strange little shop is going to be a constituent or a building block of a sentence. At that strange little shop is a prepositional phrase, since at is the main element here, right? And it answers the question where, right? And usually if it answers the question where, it is labeled as prepositional phrase. Here, to collect a verb phrase in English, you need to put a present or past tense form of do and the position of the verb phrase occupied in the original sentence as it is shown in here. The students saw a movie after class. So, it was see a movie after class that the students did. This sentence is ungrammatical, therefore we cannot say see a movie after class, that this phrase can ever function as a constituent, as a meaningful unit of a sentence. So it was a movie that the students saw about dinosaurs. It was at that strange that Nimra brought a scarf, a little shop. Again, if we apply clefting, we need to make sure that the components we apply it to sounds not odd, sounds not weird, and that it can actually function as a unit. Here, it was at that strange that Nimra brought a scarf. Well, kind of something is broken here, something is not sounds well. Yeah, at the strange that Nimra brought a scarf. Therefore, we can conclude that at the strange is not a constituent. Another example. Ratna's brother baked these delicious cookies. It was these delicious cookies that Ratna's brother baked. These delicious cookies sounds nice. It was that. The cleft sentence test works nicely, so it's fine. Here it was Ratha's brother that baked these delicious cookies. Also works okay. Here it sounds fine. So overall here, as for clefting, we simply split the sentence into several parts and apply this formula. It is or it was, depending on where, in what point in time it refers to past or to present. And try breaking the sentence into two parts. If it's checking the constituents, checking whether the group of words which stand together function as constituent or not. If applying this rule, after applying this rule, the sentence sounds okay, then we can say that the phrase is a constituent and it can function as a unit of a sentence. If it sounds odd, like at that strange, then no. For sure, this is not a unit, this is not a constituent, something has been missed, or more words should be put together to form here a constituent. Let's move on here. There is also another test which is called do so too. Usually, this test is applied to verb phrases because it presupposes the action here. Yeah, do so too. We can substitute a grouping of words in a sentence with the phrase do so too to test whether or not the grouping is a constituent. Again, for instance, Mary ate an apple, and Bill did so too, right? So here we check whether at is a verb phrase or not. Again, this test is precisely it's focused on the checking whether the constituent is a verb phrase or not. For noun phrases, we would apply pronoun test. For verb phrases, it's clefting or do so too test. So here, we know that at an apple functions as the constituent, right? So we cannot kind of divide the sentence without having these three words taken together under one label, right? Did so too, did what, at an apple. So an apple, well, these two words kind of continuation of the word at, and so therefore they function together. Besides, there is also a one substitution. a kind of substitution test where you just replace the phrase you are testing with the phrase one. For example, I want a big blue boat and he wants a small one. Or I want a big blue boat and he wants a small red one. Well, one again, substituting a phrase with one, this test would work with checking noun phrases mostly, right? I want a big blue boat here. For words a big blue boat are checked whether they can function as a unit, as a constituent. And if we can apply one which would substitute these four words and the sentence would be grammatically correct, then it is a constituent. If not, then it would result in an ungrammatical sentence, and we cannot say that these words function together as a phrase, as a constituent. Okay, so before we practice, let's sum up what we've discussed here. So first of all, again, just to recap, there are two main approaches to analyzing a sentence into their constituents. First is a phrase structure rule, when we simply look at a sentence through the lens of mathematics formula. And we say that whatever is to the left of the sentence should be written as whatever is to the right of the sentence. So we basically look at what components a sentence consists of. This is a structural approach to sentence analysis. Another way to do this is to draw trees, diagramming them. During our seminars, we've also talked with you about the advantage of using a tree diagram. Tree diagram is used to structurally illustrate what sentence or phrases consist of. And also, tree diagrams are used to deal with such an issue as ambiguity, right? Because hierarchy, different levels of structural analysis, helps us analyzing what these parts belong to, what do they modify, and so this helps us to avoid this two-ness or ambiguity which may appear if the sentence is the surface structure is the same, but there are deep structures, more than one. Also, we've discussed with you that there are 5 phrases usually in the syntactic approach, in syntactic analysis: noun, verb, adjective, adverb, prepositional phrase. How we deal with them, how we identify them. We look at a sentence, we identify the phrases, well, the components which function as constituents, and look at each constituent, identifying what verb appears to be the most important here. And afterwards, we can label them. If the noun is the most essential component, then obviously it's going to be labeled as a noun phrase. And well, the same with different other verbs or different other phrases: verb phrase, adjective, adverb, prepositional phrase. We also discussed the mechanics, these steps that we need to take when analyzing a sentence. This time, on your credit with the mark, you are going to provide me with both phrase structure rules, right? So where you would generate these structures, tree diagrams, right? And therefore, it is important to understand the steps, like the stages, how it occurs. So first, we write a sentence, we circle the components that it consists of, we'll label the parts of speech, identifying phrases, because we need to label this syntactic phrases, we need to group them and then label them. And only afterwards, we apply phrase structure rule, for example, right, saying that sentence consists of noun phrase and verb phrase. And below, we'll also analyze these phrases into their minor elements. So a noun phrase consists of a determiner and a noun, and for verb phrase, prepositional phrases, the same procedure. Afterwards, we draw a tree diagram, which looks like this. By the way, the lexical units should be at the same level, basically here, to look at the hierarchical organizations of the structural components of a sentence. To make an interrogative sentence out of a declarative, when an interrogative sentence or question sentence is derived from a declarative, we usually apply transformational rules or movement rule when we need to move an auxiliary, if it is a simple sentence, an auxiliary before the subject. For example, Mary will buy the dress. So the interrogative sentence will be derived from this declarative, and it would sound like, will Mary buy the dress? This is also an important point when we do not change the structure of a sentence like radically. We simply replace different parts to build another sentence closely related but with another structure. There would be a question on constituency, so what it means practically. Constituency is where, when, and in which place words that stand together can function as one unit or as one group. The group of words that is labeled with any phrase, noun phrase, verb phrase, adjective phrase, whatever, is called a constituent. A constituent is simply, well, again, I would use this building block or a brick of the entire building of a sentence. If they can function together and if they can be replaced with different other words, so basically if we apply a constituency test, then we can say that these are the constituent of a sentence. Also, there will be a question on whether we identify phrases or constituents by parts of speech or by the behavior. So the answer would be by the behavior. I would draw your attention to this to these three sentences. The entire string, to these three lines, sorry. The entire string of words acts like a noun. So if it acts like a noun, if the behavior is kind of similar to the behavior of a noun, then it is a noun phrase. Again, a phrase can include different other parts of speech, different syntactic categories, and you shouldn't rely on the labels of the syntactic categories. You should rely on what role it performs in this particular case, in this particular sentence. If it acts like a noun, then it's probably a noun phrase, even if there are 5 words or more. And types of constituency tests. Again, to remind you that there are many different types of tests that you can apply. Here, I've just illustrated the most common ones. There are also question-answer tests. But for noun phrases, I do recommend you to remember or to write it down somewhere. The pronoun test, right? When you just apply, when you try to substitute like 5 words or 3 words with the help of a pronoun, and if the sentence is still meaningful and grammatically correct, then we can say that this substituted words act as noun phrase. Another idea or another test for checking noun phrases is one substitution. If you can apply it, for example, I want a big blue boat, you may think whether it's a noun phrase or not. You can write one, and if it works, if the sentence appears to be grammatically correct, then you say that a big blue boat is a constituent. For verb phrases, And for prepositional phrases, basically for adjective and for adverbial phrases too, you can apply cleft test. Cleft test is a split, right? So you split a sentence into two parts and check if the if the selected group of words act as constituent or not. And finally, do so too, which is which directly refers to verb phrases. Usually we apply them to check whether the phrase is a verb phrase or not. It doesn't work with noun phrases, right? Because do so too test presupposes the action, well, the verb here. Again, example, Mary ate an apple, and Bill did so too. Ate an apple is a verb phrase, since at here is the main element and it is a verb. Okay, now it's your time. Please look at the sentence given here and let's try applying the tests that we discussed. Choose the option that shows clefting. So sentence is Anna drinks milk. You can type your answers in the chat and then we'll see whether your ideas, your answers are right or not. So which ones you think would be the correct option? A. Okay. Maybe B. Maybe. Okay, 1 minute for you to think and to type your answers here. Okay, it's A. No, not B. B. Now I see who were listening to lecture, who were just chilling. Okay, all right. So let's check. Yes. Those who answered A, you were right. It's Anna that drinks milk. Again, we break the sentence into parts, right? And apply this it or it was that to a sentence, and it results in such a sentence. It is Anna that drinks milk. Again, here we're checking Anna, right? Choose the option that shows clefting exactly for Anna. If we were wondering whether milk is a constituent, then we would apply the same clefting, but it will be formulated in a different way. Okay, let's go further here. Choose the option that shows that the underlined section is a constituent. Well, that would be a little bit more difficult. His parents visited New York last year. Which option would be correct to show that the underlined phrase is a constituent? Number one, who visited New York? His parents. It was New York that his parents visited last year. His parents visited Las Vegas last year. His parents visited New York last year and the year before. Maybe this is a task that we haven't discussed yet, but there is a hint in the formulation of these options, so that allow you to actually check whether last year is a constituent or not. C, okay. Oh, A, B, C. Oh, I've just noticed that I have two A, B, and C. Okay. If you think that it's A, write A1. If you think that it is this A, then please specify A2. It was my mistake. C, C, I think C. Okay, yeah, I think it's C, and it is not because everybody is saying so. Okay, I do appreciate your honesty. All right. Maybe C. A minute for you to think and to type your answers here. C. Well, why not B? I wonder. Also last year. Okay, so let's check. Yes, congratulations. It's C. His parents visited New York last year and the year before. The year before equals to last year, therefore we can say that last year can be considered as a component, as a constituent, or the building block of a sentence. All right, and this choose the option that shows that the underlined section is a constituent. Here we have his parents visited New York last year. The same sentence, but we check another component, whether it can function as a unit or not. The options are now correct, A, B, C, and D. So option number 1, who visited New York? His parents. Number 2, it was New York that his parents visited last year. His parents visited Las Vegas last year. His parents visited New York last year and the year before. So the majority think it's B. It can be B. It can be. What kind of constituency test can we see here? Oh, somebody thinks it's C. Still, cleft. Okay, any other ideas? Clefting, maybe clefting. Cleft test. Clefting. Clefting, cleft. Okay, all right. Yeah, so clefting, right. Agree. Yes, so it's option B is the correct answer. It was New York that his parents visited last year. For sure. Here we have this formula that is used for cleft sentence test. We divide the sentence into parts. So it was something that, or it is something that, and so we check whether we put a constituent that we want to check whether it is a constituent in between it was or it is and that. And if the sentence sounds okay, if our linguistic intuition says that it's fine, it's okay, so then yeah, it is a constituent. All right, so the majority of you answered correctly. And now, before we finish the topic of syntax in general, I want you to formulate the definitions for the following terms: syntactic category, constituent, and sentence in your own words, just the way you feel it, just the way you remember it from the seminars, from lectures. You can keep it to yourself, or if you want, you can share in chat. And I would do appreciate if you share it in the chat, like your definitions, right? So try not to use any other sources, internet, notes, lecture notes, other notes. Try to do it yourself. So I'll give you some time, around 3-5 minutes. Great, yeah. Syntactic category, part of speech. Okay. Small syntactic part that builds the sentence. Constituent. Okay, very nice. Yeah, that builds the sentence. Set of words or phrases. Set of words. Syntactic category. I would say, Susan, that your definition set of words or phrases would mostly be applied to constituent rather than syntactic category. Okay, Yulia. Constituent, a group of words that function as a single unit for the anywhere. Yeah, great. Agree. The part that relates to grammar is very brief. The part that relates to grammar. Екатерина, what term does your definition belongs to? Yana, sentence is a group of words in which one's thought can be found. Wow. Philosophic approach. Very nice. Usually consists of a subject and a predicate. Yeah. Importantly, that the subject should be present. Well, if it's not an elliptical sentence, then yes, sure, there should be subject and verb usually. All right. So while I'm waiting for your answers for these 3 terms, I will find a video that we are to watch, and then we will finish. Please type your answers in the chat. Those who haven't done it yet. Okay. All right. Then, Sentence is a group of words that express a thought or some idea. Yeah. Yeah, very nice. I thought of some idea. Great. All right. So thank you those who have participated, those who were taking part in the quiz or the tests, and in writing your definitions to the terms. Well, I guess we can so we are almost at the end of our lecture. There are some memes. Thank you so much for coming, for listening to me. And now let's watch a video. This is an interview with Noam Chomsky, and he was giving a talk on the structure of language. So let's listen to it and also take notes. Let's do.
Many people, specialists in the field, as you know, who believe that language is simply a matter of training, that a child can be trained to speak, and that there's nothing unique about this. You, I know, feel that there's something more than simply training. Why do you feel that there's something more to learning language than simply training?
Well, first of all, it's worth mentioning that most overwhelmingly people learn language without training. I mean, if you simply immerse a child in a situation in which language is spoken, he acquires the system.
But it's more than a response to the stimuli of the person around him speaking?
Well, the most obvious and sort of gross fact about language, which shows that, I think, is the innovative, creative character of it. I mean, every child is capable of understanding and producing very complex structures which have no simple relationship, no point-by-point relationship, no relationship on the basis of analogy, let's say, to the experience that he's presented.
The generative, creative structures of language.
Just that you can, as we're talking, we say new things, which we may not have said before. We hear new things.
In language, as we talk, there's very little repetition in what we say?
Well, if you really were to see how little repetition there is, you can, let's say, take a book or a newspaper or a library, for that matter, and search for repetitions of phrases or sentences and so on. They occur, but rarely so. I mean, there are particular subparts of language, say greetings or conventional utterances of one sort or another, that do repeat frequently, but these are incidentally often marginal in their structure. For example, a sentence like "How do you do?" has a structure which is, in fact, unique. It's not the structure of any English sentence. And we don't create new sentences of that type. That's just a ritualized utterance.
Yeah.
But most of our linguistic interchange is, in fact, highly innovative. And of course, it's not just random. I mean, it's innovative, but somehow appropriate to situations.
It doesn't necessarily follow the rules that we were all taught in school of a subject and a predicate or a noun and a verb. I mean, I would have the impression that somehow in my schooling I was taught to do what it is that I do now.
Yeah, well, people have that impression, but the reason is that the actual rules of language, which certainly are not taught in school, because in fact nobody even knows them to this day, are totally unconscious. I mean, what you're taught in school is some relatively superficial set of generalizations about some of the products.
Are they important? Is it important to know that?
Oh, I think it'd be important to know it, but the point that has to be stressed is that first of all, that everyone knows, speaks a language very fluently and very rich language before he ever goes to school. And furthermore, even if you wanted to teach somebody the rules of language, you wouldn't be able to do it because the rules are largely unknown. We're just barely beginning to discover them. It seems to us that there's no problem in speaking, just as it seems to us that there's no problem in, let's say, walking. But if we were to try to design an automaton, let's say, that would walk or ride a bicycle or identify a person. I mean, for example, you look at me from one point of view, and if I turn my face, you can still recognize me.
Yeah.
That's not so easy to do. I mean, we can do it because we have some special unknown capacities for perceptual identification. Well, in the case of language, too, we have this whole totally unconscious set of intricate mechanisms.
I mean, something's built into the system?
Well, I have no doubt that most of the richness of the structure of language is just a biological property of the organism. Can't be taught any more than you can be taught to have two arms and two legs.
You've got no way that you can X-ray it or put your finger on it.
At the moment, neurophysiology is not in a state where one can detect the physical structures that underlie linguistic use. I mean, only rather gross things are known. For example, it's known that language is controlled by the dominant. The brain has two hemispheres, and language is controlled by one dominant hemisphere. Incidentally, humans are, as far as I know, as far as anyone knows, the only organism that has lateralization, that has specialization of the two hemispheres. Apes don't, for example. And this is, as is well known, this is closely connected with language, and areas of the brain are known that have special relevance to various language functions. But when you get into the detailed, intricate structure of the system, it's still a mystery, entire mystery. One might say the same about learning. Nobody knows anything about the neurology of learning either, for that matter.
Now, one of the most controversial things that you've come up with is the fact that what you're saying is true not only of English, but true of all languages. There's a commonality that runs through all languages. I would have guessed that some languages were so rigidly structured that if you learned a set of 20 rules, it would take care of all situations.
Well, see, if what I just said before is true, that is, if a great deal of the structure of language is just a biological property that you bring to the learning situation, not something that you acquire in it, and if we further assume, as is unquestionably the case, that humans are not specifically adapted to learn one language or another, that is, there's no racial difference that makes it easier for you to learn this language or that language or something of that sort. From those two assumptions alone, it follows that all languages are going to be essentially uniform in that part of their structure which is biologically determined, just as there are only going to be certain possible limitations in the kind of gait that you can use when you walk. And you can't fly, no human being's going to fly. We're all going to walk. We may walk in slightly different ways, and these may be culturally determined in part, and so on. Well, I don't want to press the analogy too far. There's more differentiation in language than that. But still, I think that there is simply a biologically determined rich framework, which we can learn a lot about, incidentally. I think we can find out a good deal about it, and there are interesting theories about it that predispose us to acquire a system of great complexity of a very specific sort on the basis of a very slight familiarity, a very slight exposure to data. See, one of the most remarkable things about acquisition of language is that the child, or for that matter an adult, has had very few seconds in his lifetime, and the total range of data available to him is rather small as compared with his ability to express himself and to produce and understand sentences and utterances and discourses as he does in his normal life. And that again indicates that there's a rich biologically determined structure which therefore must be uniform across languages. Now, to get back to your original point, whether there are languages with a small number of rules that would suffice to explain everything, certainly nothing of that sort is known. I mean, insofar as languages have been carefully studied, living languages at least, they seem basically they do differ. I mean, one language is not another language, but they don't differ as far as we know.
There still is this creative aspect in all languages that is generated.
That's absolutely universal. That's just a human property, which is true of every language.
All right. Okay. So I guess that's it. Again, to remind you, please, monitors. Well, let me switch into Russian. Пожалуйста, староста группы. Я вот то, что вы написали в чат, честно говоря, я это сейчас не смогу запомнить, сохранить. Я дублирую просьбу. Пожалуйста, староста группы мне на почту. Я надеюсь, она у вас у всех есть. Напишите, кто сегодня отсутствовал на лекции. Это относится ко всем группам. К журналистам и к лингвистам. Пожалуйста, отнеситесь к моей просьбе серьезно, потому что это ваши баллы за посещение лекции. Кого не было, просто там группа 201, не было там того-то, того-то, 202, того-то, и все, я тогда вас отмечу, и вы в следующий раз распишитесь за посещение второй лекции, то есть сегодняшней, и третьей лекции, которая у нас будет с вами через 2 недели. Еще раз плюсик, пожалуйста, в чат напишите, если моя просьба была услышана. В течение дня. Напишите мне это, пожалуйста, в течение дня. Я буду ждать от вас письма счастья. Угу. Ну, надеюсь, что, если что, вы передадите там другим ребятам, другим группам, потому что это важно, да, это ваши баллы. So I guess that's it. Thank you for being here today with me. Have a nice day. See you soon. Thank you. Goodbye.